This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hello and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Teider and my guest today is Parveen Talpur. Parveen is originally from Pakistan. She's currently based in Ohio. And Parveen is a writer, a historian, and an archaeologist. Parveen, hello and welcome.
Hello, Anna. So glad to be here on your podcast. And thank you so much for giving me this chance. I love to speak about my mom and about myself. Thank you again.
Thank you for being here. I have to tell you a secret. One of my biggest dreams in my life was to become an archaeologist. I was always, as a teenager and a kid, obsessed with Egypt, with ancient Egypt, and I really, really wanted to turn that into my profession, but it never happened. Tell me about you and how did that happen for you?
Yes, I think it came very naturally to me some way, First, I should tell you, the place that I come from. Mm-hmm. It's Sindh, which is now a province of Pakistan. It was an independent kingdom, but once it was conquered by the British, they added it to their Indian Empire because Sindh is in the northwest of India. And after the partition of India in 1947, Sindh became a part of Pakistan. So that is a little history that I'm going you, and it will also tell you that how I got into archaeology. Now, my province, it's known for a site, an archaeological site. It's about 5,000 years ancient, and it lasted from 2600 to 1900 BCE. It is called the Mound of the Dead. The importance of that site is that it belongs to a very ancient civilization, which is known as Indus Civilization. My fascination for antiquity, I guess, is again my own village also, because it was very rural, wherever now it has changed naturally. There was no electricity. There were, ancient shrines where the village women from different other villages would also come and, worship the saint over there. There is their burial places, which are very sacred, known as samadhis. They were there. And it was an ancient riverbed. It was the easternmost tributary of River Indus. The best thing was that I remember of my village is that the storytellers. There was this whole generation. I guess they were the last of the storytellers generations. After that, I don't think so that, these stories are told. But during the evenings, there would be just gatherings of women. And these women storytellers, they would, of course, tell stories about magic and fairies, kings, queens. And somehow I started to believe that, these old people, the storytellers, they know the secrets of the past. And past always fascinated me because it was so magical. So I had no idea about archaeology at that time. Now, when I went to school, my elder brother, who was 2 years senior to me, his reader or his textbook, maybe the geography or history or whatever it was, it had a picture of the pyramids. First, I thought that they were mountains, and there were the camels, like a row of camels. So, which I can guess that those were really, really very high mountains. And my brother told me that these are actually the graves of ancient kings, the pharaohs. So that was my first introduction to archaeology. And then, of course, in school, when I learned a little bit more, I came to know that archaeologists are actually the people who know about the past and they dig the past. So that's when I decided that I'm going to become one. Now, after after my school, obviously college, and then there was little pause. So because I got married, and then luckily my husband always encouraged me to continue my studies. But then came my son, whom you just saw.
Yeah.
He was born, and then I wanted to enjoy the motherhood. So I waited for a few years until he was school going age, and after that I joined Karachi University for my master's in archaeology, and I was very excited. Another what happened was that I discovered at the last moment. It's not universities are not like that where you get the flyers and you do the whole homework. You know what subjects they offer, and I discovered that there was no Department of Archaeology at Karachi University.
Oh.
So, but I didn't get discouraged. I didn't get discouraged at all. And that comes from my mother, which we'll talk later when
Yeah.
we talk about mother. So I went to Vice Chancellor's office, and as soon as I stepped in, he asked me, yes, what can I do? And I told him that, there is no Department of Archaeology, and I'm so interested in archaeology, and it had been my desire, a burning desire. And so he said, first of all, you, without, asking anybody below me all these questions, you have entered my office, the highest office. And now you have come with a tall order that we don't have a Department of Archaeology. So, but at the same time, he was a very good man, very like a fatherly figure. So he made me understand. He said, look, girl, we have ancient history. You joined the history department. Go and enroll yourself. Okay, so I said, but is there anything that maybe we can have some archaeology courses also? So he saw my determination and he called one of his assistants and he told him to help me out with this issue and keep him posted. So this man, he also tried to talk me out. He said, but there is no scope in archaeology. You are the only one person. If you can bring few other students, if they sign up, maybe we can think of a way. So I convinced 5 students that they should, get enrolled for archaeology, and they did. Then the thing was that, again, archaeology department, it was not easy to open it overnight.
Yeah.
So I suggested that there is this Department of Archaeology and Museums. And I'm sure that, the officers who work there are all qualified archaeologists. So why doesn't the university hire one? And Vice Chancellor was so nice that he did hire one of them. And that is how archaeology actually started at Karachi University.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yes.
That is incredible. How did you end up in the United States then?
When I did my master's eventually, I got, I was ranked first with distinction. So based on that, I was given the chance to read my paper at the UNESCO Symposium, which was sponsored jointly by Government of Pakistan and UNESCO, because Mohenjo-daro was announced as an acknowledged as a heritage site, World Heritage Site. And they had to preserve it. So this was a preservation campaign in which I was given the chance to read the paper. And there I met many archaeologists because it was an international seminar from India, from Afghanistan, from Germany, French archaeologists. But the most important person that I met there was Dr. George Dales. He was the director of South Asia and Southeast Asia Department at the University of Berkeley, California. And he had been the last archaeologist to excavate Mohenjo-daro before the government had imposed the ban. So when I met him, I was very excited, and he said that he is here in Pakistan to whatever artifacts they had dug. Those have been, bagged and stored at the Department of Archaeology. He was actually in Pakistan to catalog all those artifacts. They were stored at the excavations department, and that department was in Karachi. And I said that, I would really like to join work. So he said, you can work as a volunteer, and if you can get a letter of no objection from the department head. I said, yes, I'll do that. And that is how I came to know Dr. George Dales. And I worked with him, and I was very happy, to work with an American team in Pakistan. And my job was, I was a novice. I just had to, put the numbers, the catalog numbers on these figurines, women figurines, which were really in abundance, animals and, seals. The most striking things were, these are called seals. They are like small tablets. And there is some kind of a script, obviously, of a very unknown language. They don't know that because it has not been deciphered yet. And there were also images below this script. There were symbols, and there were, animal images, and then the animals are facing some unidentifiable object, and trees were there, and goddesses, human images. So like on a very small tablet, like 1 square inch. So I was very fascinated with the seals. I wish I could decipher it and I could study this. But then again, there was some pause because I got a daughter now, So, so the plan, to come to United States, that was postponed. But in between, I thought that while I'm in Pakistan, I must do my PhD. So I went to meet the former Director General of the Archaeology and Museums of Pakistan. He was retired now and very well respected and a very internationally known archaeologist, So I said that, I want to do PhD, and I have, first with distinction. And so he knew me already because we had also met at, UNESCO symposium. So he said, okay, so let's decide your topic. What is your topic? What are you going to do research? So I said, the ancient script and symbols which we have discovered on the seals, I would like to decipher those. And then he told me, if that is the topic you want to do, you cannot do it in Pakistan. I said, why? So he said, because in Pakistan, none of us at the Department of Archaeology have started with that project, and we don't know what they are. So who's going to guide you on that?
Okay.
So this was a big disappointment again, And again, my mother that keep on, trying. So I knew that, very few scholars were doing research on Indus seals at that time. So when my daughter, that second motherhood that I enjoyed was with her, and when she was 5 years old, I told my husband that I think now it's time that we should go. And my plan was to go to Berkeley, that is in California, but we had some friends in Ithaca, New York. So they said that, before you'll be passing by New York, so come, let's spend some time together and then you can go to California. So I called George Dales from Ithaca, New York. He said, Ithaca, you are in a good place. Go to Cornell University. It is in Ithaca. And believe me, Anna, I didn't even know that a university existed here. And forget about a regular university. It was the Ivy League, Cornell University.
Yes.
And he told me, you go and meet Dr. Kenneth Kennedy. He had worked on he was a forensic biologist, Dr. Kenneth Kennedy, a senior professor, because he had worked on these ancient skeletons which were discovered from Mohenjo-Daro. So obviously he was there, and he said, he will help you. You go there. I'm going to talk to him. Now, luckily, when I went to Dr. Kennedy, He said that you are lucky. It's the right moment. I said, why? So he said, we are offering a seminar on South Asia. Why don't you cover Pakistan? So I was so happy. I said, yes, why not? So that was a semester-long seminar, which was there, I did that. And after that, each year, Cornell kept on renewing my contract. And I told them that I want to do this research on a field which nobody has researched from my own country. I'm from that province. I know the languages. I don't know the ancient language, but maybe even the languages which have survived there, or the dialects, maybe there are some clues in that. I just want to do research on this. And they approved my project. So for 7 long years, I was researching at Cornell, and that was my first project was archaeology. That is how I got into it. And then my second project was my own family history, on the Talpur, and we'll talk about Talpur later. So that is how,
That's incredible. Did you manage to decipher the script?
It's not easy. Do you know that more than 100 claims have been made on decipherment? Wow. If you Google it, you will find so much of literature that they have deciphered it. But still, no one has deciphered.
Have you gotten your PhD at Cornell?
No. My PhD, the story of my PhD is that, as I told you, that, I couldn't, then Dr. F.A. Khan, he suggested me another topic of another site. I did it, but, I defended it, and I came to the United States. Now, I should have gone back because there were some questions which they asked, and I should have answered that. But when I got my chance at Cornell, my PhD became irrelevant, and it was just a title that I would have had, but I never went back. And now, now I feel that I think that I have done more work than PhD.
Parveen, let's talk about Mama.
Yeah, sure, yes.
Yes, so Mama's name is Zeib.
Her full name is Zeib Nisa.
Tell me about her. Tell me about Zeib's life.
Okay. Zeib belonged to a very different world than mine, As a child, she had no education. In fact, the villages had schools, but not all the boys of the village boys went to those schools. Very few, whose parents realized the value of, otherwise, it was mostly the agricultural community, so no one cared for religion. So she was not educated. But she says that, when she saw the books and alphabets, she was like very fascinated, by education, but she was not. But again, I got a husband who had encouraged me to continue with my education. My mother was very lucky to find my father. My father was a very progressive man, I think he was a man who was born before his times. Now, he decided, and this is what my mother says, that he always used to say that if a daughter is born to me, I'm going to take her out of purdah, and I'm going to educate her. You know what is purdah?
No, please tell my listeners about purdah. I researched it, so I know about it now, but it would be great if you would tell my listeners about them.
Okay. So simply put, it is like women's segregation, that women, they live separately. They are not allowed to meet the men out of their family. The men that they know in their life are their, fathers, brothers, husbands, maybe cousins, but they are not supposed to expose themselves. And now, purdah in Talpur family had been more strict than the regular purdah. It was very strict. So I think I should give you a little bit history about the Talpurs also. They were actually the ruling family of Sindh before the British conquest.
Can I interrupt you just very, very shortly, just to make it clear? I had an Iranian guest, and she told me about the harem that her mom grew up in. And she told me how we Westerners have a wrong idea of a harem, very Hollywood movie idea of a harem. She explained that harem was simply a part of the house where women lived.
Yes.
Women and children lived. So they were totally separated from the men, and they lived in their own areas. And you say that Parda goes even further than that these women rarely even leave these houses, and would, even when they had to leave them, would be covered and would even have curtains on the cars so nobody outside of the family sees them.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your mom grew up in a Parda like this?
Yes. My mom, we don't call it harem. We call it, like, the Talpur homes are known as court. Now, the court is literally like a fort. They have very high walls, the boundary walls, the fortifications are very high. And the house would look like a doll house in the center of that premise, So my mother and all my aunts and all the Talpur families, they would live in that house. And the husbands or the males, they would have my father had a bungalow where he would, meet the peasants, or, invite his friends and meet his cousins and, have parties and whatever. So that was separate. But the family, even we, initially, obviously, we were all living in Parda. I was the first one. As I told you, my father had decided, actually, before I was born, that, if a daughter is born, he will take her out of the Parda. So my father, when I was usually we take our babies out of the house after 40 days. For 40 days, babies they are with their mother in one room, and then you go out, you take out the baby. So when I was 40 days old, my father, he took me out. He held me in his own hands, and he came out. And my mother says that all the men, they just turned their faces. They said, "Mirza, what are you doing?" They refer to him as Mir, So he said, "Well, don't turn away your faces, because this, my daughter, you will be seeing him more often, even when she grows. She is allowed to come and sit in my kacheri, which is like a gathering place where he would sit and meet people, So I had attended so many of my father's evening sessions with all the males, So this is how I came out of Parda, But that is obviously Turkish and Iran, yes, and she is your friend from Iran is so right, It is such a misconception. It's not like that, Harem is like a house, where you live,
How many children did your mom have? How many siblings did you have?
Okay, we were 6, 3 brothers and 3 sisters, But I was I'm maybe 3 or 4 years old when my father then bought a bungalow in Karachi, and then he moved the family, and my mother and we all 6 children. At that time, when we moved, obviously we were only 3, Then the other were born in Karachi. So we were moved to Karachi, and we were told that now you will be visiting village only during your summer and your winter vacations. So then, once when we moved to Karachi, so now we come to my mother's story, that, when my father put us in the school, he also decided to educate his wife also.
Oh, wow.
And he hired private tutors. And so this is how my mother got education at the age when she was mother of 6, So this is another lesson that my mother always said, that, you can do anything at any time in your life, Age is not an excuse, I tell you, I think she was kind of a very unusual woman, very intelligent, very curious, with very good sense of humor, and a great storyteller. So she learned accounting and all, to keep the accounts and all, and also the language. and she became a voracious reader, How she had evolved, that's very interesting, because I remember as a little girl that my father, these were weekends, obviously, when we were not going to the schools. It was actually her assignment to read the newspaper headlines for my father, just the headlines, nothing. That was her homework that she should, do for my father. So she would read that to him, and of course he will read the details later. So from reading those news headlines, then I started seeing, magazines in our house, short story books were there. But her interest was mostly historical novels. So she read a lot of historical novels, and she had a good sense of history, And then my father also obviously created the whole environment for my mother. Our bungalow was next to a woman. She was an announcer in Radio Pakistan. And her husband was an editor in English newspaper Star. So that was an ideal couple. And those are the kind of women that my father, because he had traveled and he had seen city women, professional women, teachers and doctors, and that is how he wanted his women to be, That's the reason that he took them. And he had grown up, with his mother and everybody, all the women just sitting in purdah and, just sitting in the swings and doing nothing, We met the right people. I'm so thankful to that couple, They became friends with my parents. Then she introduced my mother to movies, and my parents were very fond of movies. And even we would see the Bombay movies. So my mother, even as a child, I saw her evolve from a simple village woman to a city woman. Because now they would read newspapers, they would meet these educated women next door, and she introduced her to few other couples in Karachi. So it was a nice group. And some of the things that I remember they spoke about was, I remember the movie Ben-Hur was being released in Pakistan, in Karachi, one of the cinema houses. And there was a large Christian community. And how they went to movies and they would kneel down when they would see the Jesus's image in Ben-Hur. And so many, she got beyond. It's so fascinating that now it was beyond her village, not even her village, beyond Sindh, talking about Iran. Queen Suraya was divorced. Shah of Iran divorced her and got married to Farhadiba. Princess Margaret was getting married to this photographer. And John F. Kennedy, American president, was assassinated. So, all these things, it's unbelievable that a woman from village will one day will be sitting and talking about all this with her friends,
So what did you learn from her?
The story is obvious. The first thing that obviously I learned that never give up. And try things, keep on trying, and you will achieve it, And that is so obvious in my case of becoming an archaeologist. The second thing, that it is never late in life, to start anything. It's never late. And of course, the strength and how to stand for your rights. She was a great advocate of women's rights. I wouldn't say rights, but equality or whatever. And because she herself was a very strong woman, and she gave strength to the village women. Her routine in Karachi was early morning after breakfast to start writing. So morning hours were reserved for her writing. She had her Parker pen. One day I remember distinctly, she ran out of ink, and I think she was not getting it on time, and she was really restless that, I can't write, and, when is the ink coming? So that was her routine in Karachi.
What was she writing?
That comes from the village. In the village, as I told you, that my father had his own bungalow where he would, meet his people, the males. But my mother She would every evening meet the village women. She would listen to their, problems, any problems on the land, or, anything that need. But she was very fond of listening to their stories. And it's not that the women will sit down and tell their stories, but each woman had her own story, which my mother would, often talk about it. She would discuss sometimes with my dad, or sometimes, she would tell us these stories. And she was so fond of those stories and those women. Her Parker pen and her notebook would stay back in Karachi. She wouldn't even take it to the village. So I think she would just, take this whole stock of stories back to Karachi after the summer and winter vacations are over. And then in Karachi, she would write their stories. Now, there was no concept. She never even thought about publishing it, never ever thought about it, But in her last days, she had cancer. I don't know what occurred to me. I said that, she has so many stories, and I have never even tried to talk to her that she should publish it. So I took one of her stories and I went to, Pakistan International Airlines. They had a magazine which they would write obviously about Pakistan and what places to visit and villages and all that. So I spoke with the editor. I said, this is my mom's story, and it is about a woman from Sindh, but it was a true story. You know what we call narrative nonfiction? She was very good at it, He had written it with such a good story structure that it looked like a fiction, but it was a true story. So I think that, you sometimes you publish short stories also, and this is about a village, since village. So can you publish this? And he at once, he said, yes, I will. And he published. So only one story is published, and that also from her last days. And I have a copy of that. That is, I will always treasure it, obviously. So that is one of the things that can prove that she was such a good writer. But when you ask me that what have I learned from my mother, now again, she didn't sit down and give me lecture on how to write stories or storytelling, but I learned from her. So that is the biggest gift that she had given to me, storytelling. In her own life, there have been incidents from which one learns lessons. When I say that she was very sympathetic with the village women, and the story that was published is about a young girl getting married to an old man. And there is a concept of exchange marriages in Pakistan, that if a man is old, his wife is gone, now he will look for another widower whose wife is not there. So they will exchange their daughters. You marry your daughter, I'll marry your daughter, you marry my daughter. They will exchange their daughters. So these young girls, they were married to old men. And she was a very beautiful girl, I remember her. But I was giving you an example of what other things that I learned from her. She was in purdah. She was a very smart woman. And because, she would keep an eye on my father's, friends and everybody, he will come and talk. And she would at once say, oh, you shouldn't be meeting that person. I don't think so that he did something. And my father was he was quite a gullible man. So he wouldn't believe her, but she will then prove that, no, this is not a good person. Oh, yes, this one is very nice. You should
She was reading people. Did you inherit that from her?
Yes. So these village women, they started complaining about a particular manager who was favorite of my father. My father had given him a wristwatch, so he would show off. And he had a silk scarf, so he would really show off when the women are working on the fields, in the cotton fields or sugarcane or whatever was there. He was supposed to go and inspect, but he was not asked to, harass or pass personal remarks. So the women started complaining to my mother about him. So my mother, she told them one day when she got few other complaints, she said, look, you don't have to avoid him. you should lure him, seduce him, tell him to come. And when he comes within your grip, all of you just bounce upon him and beat him up. And that's what they did.
Oh, that's funny.
And he was bruised so badly, because my mother had a very good sense of humor. She said he was bruised so badly, even on his face, that he had to wait until dark to enter the village. What would he say? That he's been beaten up by the women?
Parveen, before we end, I'm curious. I always ask my guests, as you know, probably about an important lesson in life that your mom was not able to teach you, something that now you recognize as important that you had to learn yourself.
I think money making.
Oh, okay.
She never told us that, do a good business or all. So that is something that I'm still not very money-minded person, I'm not a moneyed person. So that is one thing, because all my life is in books and all this. It's all gone in that.
Parveen, will you help me to just quickly recap?
Yeah.
I think this whole evolution from a simple village woman to an educated city person who is involved and reading and active, this is so important. You didn't mention this as a lesson on itself, but I think it's very important to know that we can change and evolve. You mentioned it's never too late to start something new in life, which we also saw on her life, and that you should never give up and try things. And if you try hard, you will achieve. And we learned that from you and your life story that was beautiful. And writing and storytelling. Oh, and I wrote down stand for your rights.
Stand for your rights and women's rights.
Yeah.
I think it can, in today's term, it can be like that Me Too movement, which is going on in America, or women's rights, So I think that she was one of those, in her own context. Yes. She would have been a very active women's rights person.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Parveen, thank you so much. You taught us so many things and opened new horizons. And this was very, very inspiring. Tell me a little bit. I know you are organizing a storytelling retreat in the summer.
Yes. That is with one of my friends who lives in the island of Kythera in Greece. Mm-hmm. We have been doing this retreat since last 2 years. She's also an archaeologist. Her archaeological sites are in Greece, because this is a women's story sharing and writing retreat. Mm-hmm. And her island is also known for the birthplace of Aphrodite, the goddess, the love goddess. And Lita, that's her name, my friend Lita, she actually has done a research on Aphrodite, and won a debate in that research, because there's another archaeologist who feels that Aphrodite's birthplace is Cyprus. So I thought that, Lita liked my concept of retreat in Ithaca, New York, and she said that, why don't you have one in Greece? So that's where we are going to have it, Anna.
Okay. And we will put, in the episode notes, we will put a link with all the information about your work and your retreat. If any of my listeners, yeah, of course.
Yeah, that would be so nice. Who knows, maybe some women are interested in coming over.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I also invite you, Anna, if you would like to come.
I will think about this. Yes, my summers are very full, but this sounds so amazing. I would love to come to Greece, to an island in Greece, and write with you amazing women. I will see if I can make it happen.
Oh, please try.
Yes.
Please try.
Parveen, thank you so much again for being my guest. This was really a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Anna. And it was so nice speaking with you, and especially hearing that you wanted to be an archaeologist. So I'm sure that I spoke with the right person who was really interested and who will appreciate, my effort.
If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyoumama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Teider, that's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.